To me, sometimes it's a question of ignorance. Like we don't necessarily look carefully at our numbers. We don't know our numbers when we're jumping in. I do see a lot of people who are like you said, with the $250,000 engagement, I can tell that story, but she ran into it. And then it wasn't until the end that it was clear that there was no money made. We'll just break into real briefly. The reason she didn't make any money on it was because she was overpaying her subs. So she was thinking of going in and bidding $400,000 for this engagement. And I talked to her about what is that based on? And I think a lot of us price things like based on it seems like that's how much it should cost, right? Feels like a lot of money. When we get into value-based pricing, you want to look at what's the value that the client is going to receive. So when we looked at what this large organization was going to earn in revenues or save in costs, because they were very dug into the financials, she could give me that number. And it was like $35 million. And so I said, well, I think you should look at $3.5 million. And she said, well, I don't think I can do that. And I said, well, you probably can't because you're going to have alternatives, competitors. I call them alternatives. There's alternatives who might not charge that much money, but what's the most you can imagine charging them for this? And she said, 800,000. I was like, we'll go with 800. So we doubled that rate and she sold that in for 800. She emailed the person the next day or that night. And the next day she said he accepted. So, $800,000. And in this case, it was profitable. I think 2/3 of that is what she was able to keep when she redid the pricing on it. So to me, it just speaks to the fact that a lot of people come into the consulting profession and I know you work with other kinds of businesses. A lot of us come into these businesses for ourselves and we feel like I'm doing the best I can with what I've got, but there is something to know. And there's a way to price things. There's a way to figure out value-based pricing. There's a way to structure revenue splits with other consultants. So a lot of people I work with, they'll just be like, oh, I just didn't even think of doing that. And I just, if you talk with any CFO who works with smaller size businesses like us, they're going to tell you the same thing, 33, 35, look at your team costs. And this is the same thing that happens, that's on a project basis for that particular engagement, but they'll do this oftentimes in their business where consultants will hire people full-time to do things for them. And then that salary or those salaries will always get paid before they're taking a salary for themselves.
Right.
And I'm like, you don't ever pay anybody when you can't afford to pay yourself.